Hey, how's it going? This is James P. White from 95.7 Cruise FM, The Locker Room, and the James P. White Experience. Welcome to the Jedi Jimmy podcast. This is episode 7. Holy wow! Book of Boba Fett, episode 6. From the desert comes a stranger. This episode had so much stuff. Okay, here we go. Marshall Vanth, played by Timothy Oliphant. He actually made his first appearance in the Star Wars universe. Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 1. He's the one that Boba Fett actually ended up getting his armor back from because Mando got it at that point in that episode. So it started out like he's the Marshal of Mos Pelgo. So he's in the desert near Mos Pelgo, and then there's a couple of pikes there trying to peddle their, what's it called? Spice, which is a big drug in the Star Wars universe. And he ended up killing a couple of these pike soldiers to protect his village. Now, next scene, Mando. Where is he going? He went to go see Luke and Grogu. Ooh, okay, here we go. First, we show up and there's construction droids. They're building these temples, like these dome-shaped buildings. They're very similar to the buildings on where Luke was in The Last Jedi, but these are really cool. It's one of the buildings they're working on. It's a bigger one. It's circular. Looks like a igloo, except made out of stone. But if you remember from a flashback in The Last Jedi, there's a scene where you see Luke and R2 there, and there's flaming temples in the background. That is here, right here where we're at in this episode. That was 18 years after this point. Because right now we are... So that happened in... 29 years after the Battle of Yavin. And right now we're about 9 years after the Battle of Yavin. So that's when... Ben turned to the dark side and destroyed the whole Jedi Academy. The cool thing about this is now Mando's there and he's trying to find Luke and Grogu. And he is intercepted by R2-D2 and he takes him to a very familiar Jedi, or at least to me, and she showed up in the Mandalorian Season 2, Ahsoka Tano. I love her. The double-bladed, like the two lightsabers. Whew, awesome. Now, so at this point, where she's explaining to Mando that he has to let the kid go. If he's going to become a Jedi, he can't have the attachment to Mando. He needs to not have attachments. She alluded this in Mando because that's kind of how Anakin turned to the dark side, is he had too many emotional attachments. So we go from there, and then Grogu, we come to Grogu and Luke. And Luke's training Grogu on how to be the Jedi, use the Force. They're doing some meditation, and of course Grogu got hungry. He used the Force to pull a frog out of the river. And Luke made him throw it back. But of course Luke had to show him up a little bit and pulled all the frogs out of the water just to prove a point. Cool part. I've always loved Luke Skywalker as a character throughout the main trilogies. And this, wow. So at this point, Luke says, let's go for a walk. He takes Grogu on a walk. And the funny thing about the walk is, okay, let's say Luke Skywalker is about 6 feet tall. Grogu, about that big. So like a little over 1.5 feet. So you see Grogu walking about 1.5 feet behind. So what does Luke do? Use the Force, pushes him ahead of him, and then just kept doing it. If he got too far ahead, he just moved him in front. So funny, so cool. I loved it. Then he starts talking to Grogu and getting a little bit personal. And he's like, you remind me of someone. Master Yoda. They're the same species, obviously, but, with how Grogu looks, he's only 50 years old. But at the time that Luke trained with him, he was close to 900 years old. And he talked about how great he was with the Force and how he always talked in riddles, the way he spoke. But when he was training Grogu, he was ruining some of Yoda's best quotes. My favorite quote from Yoda is do or do not. There is no try. But how Luke said it was horrible. He's like, do, don't try. It kind of angered me a little bit. So at this point, Luke is trying to help Grogu learn a little bit more about the Force and where he came from. So he actually helped him using the Force to remember back to when he was at the Jedi Temple. That was during Order 66, when Anakin Skywalker and the clone troopers came in and killed all the Jedi. And Grogu did get out. I have a theory on how that's how that happened, but during that vision, there was a couple of Jedi and a couple of Padawans in the flashback. One of the Jedi, I'm pretty sure, is Jedi Master Sindralik. Sindralik was a Jedi Master. He was actually one of the foremost teachers on lightsaber combat. So he actually was proficient in all 7 forms of lightsaber training, and we saw him fall in this vision. But then the clone troopers approached Grogu, and then the vision ended. I think I know who saved them. I'll tell you in a second. So we go from this vision to finally Din Djarin meets Ahsoka Tano. And she explains that his connection to Grogu is not good for Grogu's training as a Jedi, because you can't have close connections, because then you become fearful of what you could lose, and fear leads to the dark side. As you know, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Now, at this time in the Star Wars universe, Ahsoka should be around 45 years old. She was around during the Clone Wars, but she was a Padawan in her teens, and so that's where we're at. And Ahsoka also explained that Grogu will actually be Luke Skywalker. He's not a master yet. He hasn't trained a Jedi. Will be his first Padawan. Now, during her conversations with both Mando and with Luke, he made reference to Anakin on how close and Luke are, him and Luke are in personality and in heart. Cool reference. I love that. Now, another part of the training was Luke had Grogu in a backpack that is very, very similar to the backpack that he used on Dagobah during his training with Yoda. Like Yoda was sitting in the backpack giving him instructions as he's, jumping over trees and doing flips through the forest and swinging on vines. And it's almost the exact same backpack. Remember, same race as Yoda. Now, after that, he had Grogu doing some private training, some balance and focus on the Force. And during that time, Luke pulled out his green lightsaber, one of my favorite lightsaber designs, which is very similar to Obi-Wan Kenobi's design, but that's for a different podcast. But he was doing a bunch of very basic techniques, but doing them very well. And he was actually using both forms 2 and 3 of the 7-form system of Jedi lightsaber fighting. Now, at this point, once he realized that Grogu was, getting the balance and connection to the Force down, Luke pulls out the training remote. Now, if you remember what the training remote is, it's a circular ball that has a bunch of holes and crystals in it that would float in the air and randomly shoot blaster bolts at you for you to learn to either dodge or defend against, like the one that Luke used when Obi-Wan was training him on the Millennium Falcon in Episode 4. So, but the cool thing is Grogu doesn't have a lightsaber at this point. So he's doing all these fancy flips and jumps and all this kind of stuff, dodging these, jumping on rocks, jumping over lakes, doing all this cool things. Very similar to the techniques of dodging and movement that Yoda used during his battles between Count Dooku and the Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars Episode 2 and Episode 3. And that was cool. I really loved that part. It was amazing. Now, we go back. Mando has already left. Ahsoka talked him into leaving. So he's back at Mos Pelgo. On Mos Pelgo, which is now called Freetown, he meets up with the Marshal and tries to recruit him and some of the villagers to help with Boba Fett's army. He recruits them, tries to get some more foot soldiers. They have their main line, but they also need soldiers. But Marshall says, I'll think about it, I'll talk to some people. But as Mando leaves, you see the Marshal look into the distance, into the desert. What does he see? A dark silhouette with almost like a sombrero-like hat. So awesome. Cad frickin' Bane. So amazing, baby. I was so excited when I saw that. And as he got closer, you see the blue, like triangular shaped face with the beady red eyes. I knew he was coming, but I didn't know he was coming this way. So he went and basically threatened the Marshal as well as his deputy, saying, "You're not joining Boba Fett and his group because I work for the Pikes." They disagreed, and both the Marshal and his deputy were shot by Cobb Vanth, who's not Cobb Vanth, Cad Bane, who is a very, very good at the use of the blaster pistol. Now, the next scene goes back to Luke and Grogu. Now, Mando did leave a gift for Mando, and what that gift was chainmail armor made out of Beskar. So Luke pulled out the Beskar armor for Grogu and Master Yoda's lightsaber. I'm pretty sure it's a rebuild of his lightsaber from the Clone Wars time, because if you remember when he fought the Emperor, he dropped his lightsaber and escaped, so he had to have built another lightsaber. So Luke gave basically Grogu an ultimatum. The ultimatum was, if you take the armor, I will take you back to Mando. If you take the lightsaber, you are committed to staying with me, and I will train you as a Jedi. You can't do both. So now we go into my predictions. First of all, my prediction is he's not staying with Luke. He's going with Mando. That's going to be so awesome. If he goes back to Mandalorian Season 3, that's going to happen. I feel it all the way to my toes. It's going to be amazing. With a little bit of his Force powers and the skills that Mando can teach him, what can go wrong? Now, a second one of my predictions is that I got to go through and explain some of the predictions that I got wrong. One of which was I thought I thought Grogu and Luke were going to join in Mandalorian Season 3. I didn't think they were going to be in this episode, but they're here. Deal with it. It was awesome. Now, I still feel the war is coming, but I don't think it's going to start and end next episode. There's way too much going on. There's way too much that has to happen. I think there's going to be a Season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. I can almost guarantee it. Now, I don't know if it's really a prediction, but it's something that I truly believe, especially after seeing some of these flashback scenes, is the person who actually, or who saved Grogu was none other than R2-D2. Remember, he traveled all the time with Anakin, but you didn't see him in between that scene and when he flew to take out the Separatists on Mustafar. I think the reason why I think that R2 saved Grogu was one main reason. Remember when he met Luke at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, he was apprehensive at first with Luke, but as soon as he saw R2, he was comfortable. They met before. There's something there. I know that R2 had something to do with Grogu's escape. Now, a prediction that I got wrong the last time was I knew Cad Bane was coming. I called it, but he's on the wrong team. I thought he was going to join Mando and Boba Fett, but he's on the side of the Pikes. Not cool. So I'm coming close to the end here. First of all, favorite quotes. Episode 1, Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect. Episode 2, Fate sometimes steps in to rescue the wretched. Episode 3, take it from an ex-bounty hunter. Don't work for scugholes. Episode 4, you could only go so far without a tribe. Episode 5, persistence without insight will lead to the same outcome. That came from the Armorer. Actually, that's a very similar quote to something that Albert Einstein said, but we'll not go there right now. Now, episode 6. This was actually a quote from Luke that he said to Grogu. And it's very deep. Get up. Always get up. So cool. It gave shivers down my spine. There's only one episode left, baby. There's a lot to happen. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a season 2. But what could go wrong? So amazing. Now, I need to give a huge thank you to my sponsors. Dean Blundell podcast on deanblundell.com. You can find my podcast and many others, one of which is Fire for Effect, which is also run by my friend Army Chris, who helps me produce all this stuff, make this look the best it can, and Fire for Effect Productions. And wow, I'm so excited. One episode left. Okay, here we go. See you next week for my next breakdown. Let's get her done.